Sonic and Shadow are back. Sonic X Shadow Generations is a remaster of 2011's excellent Sonic Generations, with an additional brand new game focusing on everyone's favourite edgelord, Shadow. Originally, I was going to skip this release, having been burned out on Sonic thanks to last year's disappointing release, Sonic Superstars. But when I saw this game demoed at this year's Tokyo Game Show, as well as everyone's positive reactions to the Shadow Generations portion on social media, I quickly changed my tune, and boy am I glad that I did. Sonic X Shadow Generations is a return to form for the Sonic franchise. As I, like a lot of guys born in the early 90s, played Sonic Adventure 2 Battle when I was 12, which was probably the most awesome thing I'd ever played in my life up to that point. Shadow himself informed the angst of my teenage years, and I suppose that part of me never really left. So my anticipation was pretty high, seeing him thrust back into the spotlight 20 years later. So, is this release any good? Well, it's a typical Sonic mixed bag, but it is, for the most part, positive. There are quite a few flaws that prevent it from being a home run from Sega and Sonic Team, so by the end of this review, you'll know if it's worth shelling out for. With that out of the way, we gotta go fast and let's get stuck into it. When Sonic's birthday party is suddenly interrupted by the appearance of the Time Eater, Sonic and friends are thrown into the void-like white space, where Sonic meets a younger version of himself. Stuck in this temporal anomaly, the duo must put their speed to good use and restore the flow of time by playing through levels inspired by past games, and put a stop to the two Eggmans. This part of the game hasn't changed in the 13 years since the original's release, and it's still fine all these years later, but what we're all here for and where the game truly cooks is Shadow's brand new story mode, Shadow Generations. Taking place concurrently with Sonic Generations, the Time Eater's attack interrupts Shadow mid-mission. He's investigating the sudden appearance of a mysterious life form on his birthplace, the derelict space colony Ark. With his defeated nemesis, Black Doom's emissary, the Doom's Eye, getting entangled with the Time Eater's temporal anomaly, Shadow faces a reckoning with his past and must find a way to stop Black Doom's resurrection. That all sounds a bit silly, and we don't come to Sonic games for the deepest stories around, but it's incredibly well done here for what it is. Lead writer Ian Flynn really understands why people like these characters, and his writing really elevates and adds heart to a story that is basically just animal mascots in ridiculous situations. Knowing full well that Shadow is the type of edgy character that teenage boys gravitate to, the story really leans hard into it. Unlike Sonic relying on his friends, Shadow is a true lone wolf, trying to escape his dark past. Knowing how Shadow works at a conceptual level means Shadow Generations is basically a flawless story that will satisfy all Sonic fans, especially big fans of Shadow specifically. Told through superbly directed cutscenes and an excellent anime-style opening prologue, it's some of the best Sonic storytelling in the series. And going one step further, it's very cleverly tied into the events of Sonic Generations, which are taking place at the same time. The one-off rival battle against Shadow in the OG Generations is actually a major part of the story now when viewed from Shadow's perspective, so I applaud how cleverly this new piece of content is tied into the storyline of a game that was originally released 13 years prior. It's not easy to write in retcons without them feeling disjointed, but it flows naturally and organically here. And as a whole, Sonic X Shadow Generations succeeds as a laser-focused nostalgia bomb, seemingly directed at me personally, as well as basically everyone who grew up with the likes of Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog. Playing the City Escape level from Adventure 2 was a catalyzing, formative canon event for me and probably for a lot of you guys too, so 20 plus years later, playing Generations' take on it again in 60 FPS HD, as a middle-aged man is nothing short of a nostalgic thrill ride that re-energized me, awakened my synapses, and fixed my back pain. Without spoiling anything, Shadow Generations also gives you a glorious Adventure 2 throwback, so having this nostalgia nuke just dropped on me was one of the best gaming experiences I've had this year. I'll never not enjoy having that teenage part of me pandered to, so thanks Sonic Team, I really appreciate it. So how about that gameplay? Sonic Generations remains one of the best 3D Sonic efforts all these years later, and it has indeed been remastered. It plays a bit smoother than the original, but I find it amusing that, despite getting a refresh for modern consoles, a lot of the jankiness and bugginess remains intact. Jank is basically Sonic's brand at this point, and if you enjoyed the OG Generations or more recent 3D Sonic games, it's nothing you can't put up with. Those momentum-killing spike traps or mistimed jumps will always haunt your playtime, but at least thanks to the quick load times and overall fast-paced polished gameplay, it's not too much of a headache. I can't help but feel a tad disappointed that Generations gameplay wasn't polished up a bit more for its re-release, but it is what it is. I'll get into how it performs as well as its visual upgrade in a bit. As for Shadow Generations, those madmen at Sega and Sonic Team actually did it. They delivered brand new original content that exceeded my expectations. Sega must have seen how well received the Bowser's Fury mode that came packaged with Super Mario 3D World's re-release on the Switch was, and thought to themselves, ooh, I'll have that. Just like Mario in that game, Shadow gets his own 3D open-world hub to run around in. Reinterpreting Sonic Generations' 2D white space hub area into a 3D one for Shadow must have been a big task for them, as Sonic Generations itself doesn't have any open-world 3D sections. They've clearly reinterpreted and reused some of the ideas from Sonic's open-world debut game Sonic Frontiers, and surprisingly, it's done pretty well. The hub world certainly isn't the best part of the game, and being the only open-world section in what is mostly a linear platforming game means it doesn't play perfectly smoothly, so it's very easy to mess up a lot of the jumps and turns, but I appreciate the effort they made into creating something brand new. As for the actual levels themselves, these are a true joy to play. These mostly take the form of levels inspired by Sonic games that have been released since the OG Generations in 2011, so it not only offers something new to play, but updates and pushes Generations' concept of a Sonic Greatest Hits collection celebration even further. I won't spoil what's on offer, but if you've been keeping up on your 3D Sonic or have a soft spot for games featuring Shadow, you'll be dutifully rewarded. It's yet another example of Sonic Team actually knowing and considering exactly what their audience wants and delivering on it. And as for the biggest gameplay change of all, Shadow's heavily marketed Doom powers. He gets the option to glide, which is fun, but not too big of a change. Sadly, he doesn't get a gun this time, but instead he gets Doom spears, allowing you to lock onto and shoot multiple targets at once. Not as fun as seeing a mascot character with a gun, and honestly nothing ever will be, but at least the Doom Spears are fun to use. But where it really cooks is Doom Surf, allowing Shadow to surf on the water. Surfing controls quite smoothly, and it's fun jumping and spinning around on the water at blinding speed. And finally, Doom Morph, turning Shadow into whatever this is. This one felt a bit janky to me. If you mess up a jump and fall outside of the purple goop required to use it, momentum stops to a screeching halt, which is no fun at all. He's also got Chaos Control again, which slows down time briefly, but this doesn't really do much for me either. Still, I like the aesthetics of it as much as I like the aesthetics of all these Doom powers, which lean hard into the edginess of Shadow as a character. It's a perfect unity of characterization and gameplay innovation. And speaking of aesthetics, the stages where you encounter the Doom's Eye are a sight to behold, morphing surroundings into trippy, impossible dream sequences that look like something out of Inception or Doctor Strange. It's an aesthetic that's new to Sonic, enhances the frenetic gameplay, and left me with a lasting impression. 10 years from now, people will ask, which one was Shadow Generations again? To which we'll reply, the one with the weird and trippy action sequences. The most memorable part of the game for me. And going full circle in this gameplay section, Shadow Generations is not excused from the problem of jank either. The usual suspects are all here. Sudden spike traps, easily mistimed jumps and failed lock-ons, as well as glitches and bugs out the wazoo. As I said, this is the Sonic brand at this point. Sega and Sonic Team will never polish a Sonic game to the same standard that Nintendo does with Mario, but I've well and truly accepted that. We will always wonder what a polished and fine-tuned Sonic game will look like, but it's not going to happen anytime soon. And Sonic X Shadow Generations is certainly not it. Still, the foundations of the OG generations it's built upon are pretty solid, and overall it doesn't play as jankily as other installments like Sonic Colors Ultimate or Sonic Superstars, so there's that. The jank doesn't, overshadow the experience. And ultimately, Sonic X Shadow Generations is still very fun to play. In terms of length, neither game is particularly long. I didn't 100% Sonic Generations this time, as I did that 2 or 3 times back in the day on the 360. If you fly through it, you'll complete it in an afternoon, but you'll get a lot of replay value if you seek out every challenge and collectible. Shadow Generations is nowhere near as long, also completable in an afternoon, but with far fewer challenges and collectibles to unlock. This is ultimately a remaster of Sonic Generations with some bonus content that does not equal the length of it. But because the Shadow content is insanely fun to play and adds a lot of new ideas, this 2-game collection is still good value for money. So, how about those visuals and performance issues? Well, there's a bit of whiplash going on here. I played the PS5 version, as after my experience with Sonic Colors Ultimate on the Switch, there was no way I was going to chance the Switch version of this. On PS5, Sonic Generations looks incredible. I played the bejesus out of the original on the 360 back in the day, so this remaster is how I remember it. Clearly, a lot of textures and other assets have been refreshed, and especially the water effects look incredible. The moment you fire up the first Green Hill Zone level, you'll immediately notice this is the best that zone has ever looked. Surprisingly, Sonic Generations seems to run at a pretty consistent 60 FPS, so the fast frame rate enhances the high-speed pace of the gameplay. Truly the definitive way to play Sonic Generations. But as soon as you start the new content, Shadow Generations, the whiplash is insane. Shadow Generations, on the other hand, looks to be locked at a comparatively sluggish 30 FPS. It's immediately noticeable going from one game to the other, and is frankly disappointing. While a lot of the new levels have outstanding visuals, and there's a lot more going on with Shadow's Doom powers and trippy action sequences, it's a downright shame that the frame rate had to be sacrificed to keep up. I also felt that the resolution didn't look quite as crisp as Sonic Generations, and the water effects didn't look as nice either. I'm no expert on these things, so the fact that these things are noticeable to a layperson like me is not a good sign. The PS5 should be capable of handling what's on screen, as this is still just a Sonic game after all. So yeah, what a shame. Not a game-breaking experience or anything, but just go in knowing that performance is not the same between the two games. Finally, the music. Now, if there are two things we can count on in Sonic games, it's jank and good music. Well, the music here is unsurprisingly excellent. The Generations soundtrack has always been full of bangers, and hearing that remix of Escape from the City 13 years later is as invigorating as ever. Some of the tracks from Shadow the Hedgehog get great remixes here too, and the other remixes and original compositions in Shadow Generations maintain the high bar of excellence that is Sonic music. While I would have loved some new vocal songs that reach the highs of Sonic Frontiers soundtrack, there are none to be found here. Still, a boppy, cheerful soundtrack for Sonic's portion and a rockier, edgier soundtrack for Shadow's portion proves once again that Sega and Sonic Team know exactly what their fans want. Bangers across the board. To conclude, with Sonic X Shadow Generations, Sega and Sonic Team have delivered a worthy entry into the Sonic canon. An excellent remaster of one of the more beloved Sonic installments, bundled with a brand new side game featuring a fan favorite character, make this collection great value for money. But remember to keep your expectations in check, as this is still Sonic after all. So performance issues and sporadically janky gameplay do cause headaches from time to time. This is par the course for the Sonic franchise, but at least it's not as bad here as it is in other games in the series. By honing in on nostalgia, knowing what makes their characters work so well, and delivering fun new gameplay concepts, Sega have restored some of the goodwill that they lost with their last disappointing release, Sonic Superstars. With Sonic Frontiers and now Sonic X Shadow Generations, the developers are finally starting to cook with this series again. Sonic X Shadow Generations may not be a perfect game, but it's an incredibly fun outing for Sonic and friends, and really does bode well for the future of the series. For Sonic fans, this game is a no-brainer, and for casual fans, it's one of the better offerings to get you into the Sonic franchise. So, thanks for watching until the end. Have you played Sonic X Shadow Generations? What's your favourite Sonic game? Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below, and as always, I'll reply to you. And since my last upload, I've reached 300 subscribers. Thanks to you guys, I've now hit my 2024 goal. So if you haven't subscribed, why not hit that subscribe button to keep this gravy train a-rollin'? With the impending release of the Switch 2, 2025 is going to be an epic year for games. And on this channel, I'll be reviewing whatever I play without the bias that you often find in major gaming publications. So if that's something you'd be interested in, smash the bejesus out of that subscribe button and hit the like button as well while you're down there. I really do appreciate it. So, have a good one, and I'll see you next time.